So in this lesson, we will identify irony, allusions, theme, and we will come up with an allegory. So for the irony, now it's important to know some historical context. So the late 1800s was the Industrial Revolution, and it was the creation of this idea of the assembly line with Henry Ford, the maker of the Ford cars. Basically, workers would have a specialized task in the factory. So they would only work on the engines or they would only work on the tires. And then another specialist job would be to get it all together, put the components together, right? To complete the product. So now in the story, that's what is the Forsters insinuating, that people have taken this assembly line approach to the next level where they're so focused on their one task in the machine that no one actually knows how it operates as a whole. And if in order to understand a single piece of something, you have to understand it as a whole. And obviously that's the irony here. That technological advancements require specialization. But if you don't remember to look at the issue or the product holistically, you're going to have problems. The irony, they consider themselves so advanced and enlightened, they don't even notice that society is crumbling around them. The machine has a bunch of latent problems that no one is realizing yet, or they're realizing it, but they're just accepting it. People's acceptance of what is just okay, what's good enough. All right, now we have a lot of illusions here. The illusion that I believe that you pray to it when you are unhappy. That is the illusion that the machine is a religious entity. Okay. Let's see. Other illusions. Oh, wait. Let's go when they start to talk about the French Revolution. That one's really important. So the French Revolution occurred when the third estate, like the regular class, the peasantish class, was holding up the king, the noblemen, and the clergy, right? And then they um, guillotined the prince, and it was Marie Antoinette said, "Let them eat cake." And we had the French Revolution, where the people took back some of their power and got equality, tried to fix some equality issues. Now, in this story, as they're mentioning, here we go. So we have do not learn anything about this subject of mine, the French Revolution. Instead, what I instead learn instead what I think that in a cartoon thought arisen, thought Gutch, thought, okay, this very long allusion. These are famous philosophers throughout time. And this allusion to the idea that don't learn anything for yourself. Only learn about things through that specific specialized voice. So, for example, we could kind of apply this to American news media. You only need to watch one news station, and that's your news station. And you don't need to evaluate your news station or watch other news stations. That's pointless. Don't do that. So, by mentioning these philosophers here, and in regards to the French Revolution, we can say this illusion, by alluding to the French Revolution, the other is pointing out how allowing absolute power in a society will be its downfall, right? That's part of it, right? Because the French Revolution was this all-powerful king, and they messing with all the people, making their lives not good. They weren't thriving, right? They were barely surviving. So we can say the illusion is saying, don't learn by alluding to the French Revolution. The author is pointing out how allowing absolute power in a society will be its downfall. The mention of the other of the philosophers is an attempt to show, or the mention of the other philosophers shows the dangers of taking information from only one source and not evaluating the event independently. Something like that, right? So this is alluding to the fact that when you only listen to one media outlet or one voice or one person's opinion, and they're relaying the information to you, you're not going to know it for yourself. And that can create a collapsing society, like we see in our story here. And so, those other allusions to the technology, all of this would be allusions to technology and the assembly line and the gramophone music, those would have been coming out so in the early 1900s. So, allusion to any types of technology. Now we have modern life. Wait, one more. With the French Revolution, right? You can also say French Revolution being mentioned is significant because it symbolizes society cannot function with a supreme ultimate leader that cannot be questioned. That's the other thing. No one could question the machine. And when we get into, so a theme here can be bureaucracy. I'm going to write that. So throughout the story, right, every time you had to make this request, like nothing ended up getting done. So bureaucracy is just government agencies that are supposed to get things done, like the Department of Homeland Security or the FBI is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Their bureau is in charge of investigating things. So bureaucracy, we can say the story shows how bureaucracies, government agencies, I'll put that, how government agencies are only as strong as the citizens that hold them accountable. So every time the machine started to get broken, you have wait, the respirators were abolished, other things. The people could listen on a gramophone. Okay. At one point the sound stops working and they're complaining. That's when they do so we have the Central Committee year by year decreasing in its intelligence. We can say something about, wait, this was the modern life one. And this would be globalization. Wait, if we're going to say the failing, technically the failing technology does go under the bureaucracy because they don't, this is talking about year by year, the duties of man, okay? So every year the new person, so you have like the apprentice, right? Learning from the person above them. Every year they're learning less and less, right? So when it says those master brains had perished, they had left full directions is it true. And their successors had each of them mastered a portion of those directions. So we can say on page 19, if I can get this to highlight, which I cannot. We'll say on page 19. On page 19, it is explained how the machine's engineers began to fail as well. All right, so we have failing bureaucracy, failing engineers here, and the globalization. So that was from part one, where Vashti went to the surface and everything looked exactly the same. We can say For few traveled in these days, for thanks to the advance in science, the Earth was exactly alike all over. Rapid intercourse, which from the previous civilization had hoped so much, had ended by defeating itself. What was the good of going to Peking when it was just like Shrewsbury? So this globalization idea could say, if no one travels, then people are going to lose their culture. Like the one of the reasons people travel is to visit and experience other cultures. So in this society where everywhere is exactly the same, it's going to encourage people to stay exactly where they are. And this loss of individuality, you could say, uh, with this human connection, cultures, cultures and region or cultures are no longer shared. People do not travel or congregate, um, or even visit with each other, right? Like that's this human connection. So for the globalization, we could say, and another part, the homelessness thing, right? Now, when Kuno is booted or threatened with homelessness, and it implies that he dies, this is more of a, um, I'm making an inference. And I'm going to say if there is, wait, when we think about the homeless, right? The reader can assume that a mass genocide took place and only the worthy of the society and only the worthy around the world were permitted to enter the machine. Everyone else was left to perish, which is this example of globalization because it shows um, everyone else everyone else was left to perish, which is an example of globalization because no matter where in the world one lives, it is always the wealthy that will have priority. So you have the whole world. And even if we had the billionaires um, in China, or even if we have billionaires in Brazil, um, it's like it wouldn't really matter. It's just everyone in the whole world, no matter where you lived, that fit the criteria to live in the machine, you get to go. And then the poor, and we could maybe say the poor and the destitute in the third world didn't even get the chance to come into the machine. Um, like the opportunity to live inside this technologically advanced cell was only given to first world nations or people that had some type of wealth, not the destitute. That would be the globalization, that people are all over the world were left behind in possibly mass numbers. And then modern life. This would just be modern life's technologies or modern life's convenience, and how people will accept things if it's inconvenient, even if it's inferior. So we could say like sacrifices for convenience. Um, that would just be how people kind of are today. Modern life theme would be comparing it to anything we see today. Um, and when she's saying, I see you, it's good enough, you're in the plate, I get the idea of you, we don't really need to we don't need to have a face-to-face visit, right? All right, and then for the allegory, this story is an allegory of what can happen if citizens allow AI to play a more integral part of world governance. So you could say that the machine represents human advancements or represents present day artificial intelligence models that are being adapted or that are being mm, developed daily by tech corporations. And then Vashti represents those that follow the status quo of society. Vashti would be the majority that does not question or complain about their socioeconomic status or rights, things like that. So then you could say Kuno represents those in society that fight against oppression and you can say oppression and I want to say maybe inequality, but everyone had like the same thing except for the people that were outside. Because then Kuno found out that people were out there, and he was sort of advocating for them too. Like he was saying they're out there and they can survive. It shows that it's possible. So we could say equality for all. And then when you go into part two, and it's going to talk about, and Kuno goes into what he saw, and that he saw the ferns and the plant life and the person, we could say that those were the machine's way of pushing, we could also say climate. So oppression, equality for all. Kuno wanted to, we could say, save save what was left of the Earth's surface for future generations to enjoy. If the story was viewed as an allegory, Kuno would represent activists and revolutionaries of present day and history and in history who fought for environmental protections and equality for all. This was very dramatic, but when you're building an argument, you want it to be kind of dramatic, because you want to be saying, this is what the story truly represents. Kuno represents the activists and revolutionaries of the world, while Vashti represents the majority of the population that is satisfied with the status quo, despite crumbling infrastructure and lead poisoned water. That's like an example of how you would give it a dramatic effect when you're building an argument or an introduction to introduce it.